It's episode 117 of the Improv London podcast. I'm your host, Stuart Moses, and this week's guest is Vicky Hawley.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well. We're waving.
Yeah, we are. It's a two-hander, which I'm into. We've got 4 waving hands, and I'm very excited.
There's a lot of waving going on. I don't know, it just feels like it's like, hello. How are you? Welcome to the podcast.
I enjoyed it. I think I most enjoyed it because we have been speaking previously for a while.
Vicky has been helping me with my Facebook posts. And I can say it's a lot easier with two. I don't know.
I'm more than happy to choose a background.
Yeah, well, I felt comfortable in your choices.
Good,
I was just
good,
like, anyway. We've experimented with telling people. This is probably not.
It's fine. It's fine. It's the behind the scenes bit. We're good.
So we've explored telling people when we're going to do a Facebook Live, giving them an hour's warning. Hour's warning, that sounds... That's a little better word for it.
Prepare yourself.
Prepare yourself.
Gather the tinned goods.
But by the point we're listening to this, anyway, do check out the Improv London YouTube page where you can find out all the post-recording chats we've done on Facebook Live.
I didn't know we had a YouTube. That's very exciting.
Yes, I have a YouTube. I've spent quite a lot of time converting the MP3s to the MP4s. I don't know whether... Okay, so we have fewer listeners on YouTube than we do on SoundCloud or sort of different podcast things. But I don't know if that's because I haven't put all the episodes on there yet. But I just think it sort of helps with visibility. So if people do a search, we're more likely to turn up, sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
I forgot to shut the window. I'm just going to shut the window.
It's so good.
And the listeners going, oh wow, it's much better sound quality now.
How will I know what's happening at London Bridge Station? That's good.
Well, we can look out the window and give them updates. Yes, I should say thank you to the nursery for letting us record in here. Mm-hmm. Thank you, the nursery. Hello.
Hello.
I just feel that I'm normally more professional than this.
I guess I bring it out in people. I'm not sure if that's necessarily a good review of myself.
I feel like I'm feeling, I'm normally relaxed, but I'm feeling more relaxed than usual. So I think that's
It's like a beach episode. Like we're a sitcom and we've gone to the beach and it's just all chill and relaxed. You know?
Or is that like when you have a sitcom and then they make the film and they go on holiday because they don't know what to do with the... I don't know. This is welcome to the beach episode of the Improv London podcast.
Yep.
I was going to say something about us being in our trunks, but it's not an image I want to paint. Let's talk improv.
Yay!
Yay! Let's talk about the hero's journey.
Oh, yay! Brilliant.
Because I have to say, this was the... I saw this is a new nursery original, and I thought, oh, that's really exciting. I'd like to talk to you about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're excited for it. So at the time of recording, not necessarily the time of release, we've just had our auditions. We've got a really, really solid cast. I'm really, really excited. But maybe like one of the most positive things that has come out of this original before we've even started recording it was how much fun it was to run the auditions for everyone, because I tried to keep them very workshop style, very fun and relaxed, because I was aware we're looking for a small cast. We had quite a few people come and audition, and I wanted that to be a positive experience. And a lot of people have mentioned, even if they didn't get into the core cast, that it was fun, they learned something new, a new game, they made a new friend, and so I was really, really thrilled to, in effect, have a gatherance of nerds and then release everybody else, afterwards. So it's really, really exciting. We've got our first rehearsal on Sunday, and fingers crossed everything will set up smoothly. So I'm very excited. The hero's journey as a concept, just in case anyone thinks we're talking about the narrative structure, is going to be an improvised high fantasy adventure quest story, which is sort of drawing influence from Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, I think, is probably our most significant influence. And just a whole variety of essentially these high fantasy adventure quest products that obviously we all know very well, and I think everybody, if asked, would be able to name a favourite. And I'm sure a lot of people will also send tweets and messages being like, technically this isn't high fantasy. The argument could be made that Monty Python and the Holy Grail was actually a low fantasy surrealist epic. And I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm talking about things like Skyrim, okay? And yeah, I really like those stories, but I feel like the thing that improv can allow us to do is diversify and adventure in more different ways, and we can play around with the identity of a hero. When I put hero in the title, I didn't want it to mean specifically a Luke Skywalker style farm boy, and I think we can really play with who a hero is. I think we're going to be able to play really well with what a happy ending means as well. I really wanted to get away from the boy gets princess that he's been pursuing the entire time, except they've never really had a conversation and they've just kind of been in danger for a while. So yeah, and I think being able to do that with improv specifically is really fun, because we can explore all of these options without needing to spend months and months in production. And in effect, yeah. So that is the hero's journey, I suppose, in a nutshell.
That sounds amazing. So, what was it that drew you to this subject matter? I presume you must be a fan of this genre.
Yeah,
it's a
definitely.
Curious choice.
Yes. No, actually, I'm just a historical realist. I'm just fascinated. No, I love. Yeah, I've always loved high fantasy quest stories, and
me too.
The idea of it's so engaging, right? This world of magic and intrigue and elves and dwarves, and basically I think what's so attractive about it for me is that everybody has their own feature, like their own uniqueness, and you can play with either more traditional approaches to say, dwarves live underground and all have beards, but not the women, though. The women dwarves have beards. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's true. I thought everyone knew that.
Right. I'm sorry. If you own any property that has dwarves in, the ladies can have beards too.
Yeah.
But that's just a rule. But yeah, that kind of uniqueness really fascinated me, and it always slightly frustrated me that you have these beautiful, magnificent worlds where you can imagine living trees and dragons that run entire kingdoms and treasures the likes of which we could have nothing like in the normal world, but you can't imagine that your hero's a woman, or that your hero falls in love with someone of their own gender, or the adventure is not necessarily just like treating women like objects, or maybe there are no women at all, cough the Hobbit, cough. And then when we put Evangeline Lilly in, everyone hates her character because she's poorly written and reduced to a love interest, and she could have been so cool. But that's like scratching the surface of my issues with the Hobbit films. But yeah, so I think that kind of genre has always fascinated me, and I've always loved, I still remember the first series I read, the high fantasy series. I think it was one of these cheesy ones I read when I was about 13. It was Maggie Fury's Artifacts of Power.
Oh, I've not read that.
And it was, it's bad. It's not great, I'll be honest. It's a kind of thing you love as a 13-year-old or as a teenager, essentially, but it's not a work of art. I don't think anyone thinks it is, but it's so inspiring, and the reason that it was so fascinating to me was because the main character was a woman, and her name is Orion, and she goes on these fascinating magical journeys to collect magic artifacts and try and defeat an evil mage. I mean, we've heard it all before, but it just breathes so much new life and so much fascination into that, because suddenly you found the female characters relatable. It's like seeing Wonder Woman. I'm sure a lot of your listeners will kind of have that identification with that moment where you see someone on the big screen, even though I look nothing like Gal Gadot, and we've had completely different lives.
I beg to differ.
But well, thank you. Well, and now I can take the braces off. Clink, clink.
You have me in your lasso of truth, so I'm unable to lie.
I shouldn't have come on a podcast in cosplay. I'll take it as a note. It's fair. But we have completely different lives, completely different experiences. But because she's written like a person, suddenly it's like, women. Of course, women can do this too. I'm sure a lot of people have this experience with Black Panther. And that's such a positive and wonderful experience that I think there is so much potential in the high fantasy genre, and I think it really is a stage at which we can either choose to diversify and explore all these amazing new options and these stories that maybe have been told before but not in the same way, or brand new stories or whatever, or we can kind of let the genre calcify in exactly the same kind of habits, essentially. And that's fine, and it would keep making money, but it's just going to lose people. It's not going to be engaging, it's not going to be fun, and all of those people who are creators, who are writers, artists, performers, musicians, who could be enticed and intrigued and fascinated by a more diverse high fantasy world, are just going to go elsewhere, and they're just going to find other things to put their time into, and that's a massive loss.
Yes, and by doing this, you can take these tropes that are well established, that are familiar, and you can enjoy them and you can use them, but you can also make them new at the same time.
Exactly.
You get the best of both worlds.
Completely. I love that kind of thing where there's a couple of very, very popular Dungeons and Dragons streams online, and one of my favourites is Critical Role, which is kind of led by Matthew Mercer and a bunch of voice actors in the States. It's amazing. And what's maybe the most engaging thing about Critical Role is how Mercer's worlds are so steeped in the traditional fantasies. They fight dragons and liches and they're a group of ragtag adventurers, but you have modern, more identifiable themes. So in the first campaign, minor spoilers, I guess, for anyone who wants to listen. Just skip it a little bit ahead if you don't want to be spoiled for Critical Role Campaign 1. Two of his NPCs that he hadn't planned to ended up getting together, and they got married, and their wives, and something about that just really hit home for me and was amazing, because I'd never heard it done or seen it done ever before in the fantasy genre. And I think that merging of fantastic old traditional beasts of myth and legend and really high stakes adventures with the fact that these people now seem less like characters and more like people. So I think that kind of modern adaptation is one of the ways in which high fantasy is already diversifying, and of course there are a lot of very, very cool creators already out there doing this kind of thing in webcomic, web series, streaming, all of these different forms. I'm not the first person to try and do this, thankfully, but I'm very excited.
I mean, I got into improv because I was a role player.
Oh, cool. What systems?
Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, yes. Yes, love it.
So I find the idea of people watching role-playing games and getting into role-playing games through watching them on YouTube fascinating, because, when I got into it, that wasn't an option.
Of course, yeah.
And what a great way of finding out about things and not having to rely on one person who, to introduce it to you, but just being able to go online and even just be a part of campaigns without, having to go through the organisation of playing. It's
completely.
Like, we live in exciting times.
Yeah, completely. I love that kind of thing, and I love how much it seems to have given, like Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop role-playing as a whole, kind of a new life. There seems to be a whole new generation of people who've seen it through Critical Role and similar things. Or The Adventure Zone, which is another great one, and then they've come online and hooked up all across the world to try and get Dungeons and Dragons sessions together. And I think that's just so brilliant. I think that's amazing. And everybody is playing their own versions of a fantasy world. And Call it, like, obviously all of the systems Call of Cthulhu as well. Call of Cthulhu frightens me because of the insanity rules. It terrifies
the
me.
death spiral, yes.
Oh, no, thank you.
Well, it's the opposite of Dungeons and Dragons in that there you progress and you get stronger and you get more powerful, whereas Call of Cthulhu, you fight not because you're going to win, but because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And the more you fight, the more you lose. And,
absolutely. It's like an inbuilt tragedy. That's super fun.
I think that's why I love
engaging. It. Yeah. I think that tells us a lot about you, actually, Stuart.
Yep. I think it probably does.
It's definitely engaging. I love that kind of thing. And I love the idea of an adventure that ends in tragedy, that doesn't have a happy ending. Obviously, I like happy endings as well, but having some variety there is great.
Yeah, you do what is right, but not necessarily what is good for you. Yes. Cool. So that sounds really exciting. And there's going to be some performances.
Yep. They're going to be on the Saturday of November, all Saturdays through November, and the 1st of December as well.
Fantastic, at the Nursery Theatre.
Yes, indeed.
Do check out the internet for details.
Yes, oh, yeah. Yeah, please do. I've been terrible with dates and different systems. I sent people to the wrong venue one time. I booked
Really?
in the past. I booked flights for the wrong month. I'm very much relying on my Saturdays. Very much relying on my calendar.
Right, very nice.
So Saturdays, definitely Saturdays.
Definitely Saturdays. Well, that sounds very exciting, and it's too soon to reveal who's in the cast. Despite the fact I warned you before we started recording not to list people as an improv group, so I feel like I'm
absolutely
setting you up for a trap there. So I apologise, but I'd like to retract that question.
That's quite all right. Well, my perception check was high enough, so I saw it coming. I keenly diffused it with my lockpick.
Oh God, is that not? I mean, I don't really want to get into this, but I did find there was a lot of like listening at doors. And that's my kind of. I know D&D isn't just that, but I did feel like, let's listen at the door. Let's
Well,
like
with that with
10-foot
roles.
pole. Is that still the
Yes,
thing?
yes. Oh, D&D as a whole, yeah. I think it massively depends on how you play it, though. I mean, a lot of people are very much into that more realistic style of playing it, where I think you do that because it's actually kind of an older style of DMing as far as I understand, having, read my nerd history only in brief, where essentially it's like a battle of wit between the DM and the players, and the players just have to accept that you'll lose characters and don't get attached to them because they're basically tools to work your way through the puzzles that your friend is setting you. And that's great and fun, but I really like adventure styles that rely less on the listen really closely here, do this, do that. I've been DMing my own campaign with a few members of the Oxford Imps, or former members. We've all kind of become the diaspora now. We've all kind of spread out, mostly to London. It's interesting trying to get that balance when you're DMing of how much will keep the interest of your players, and will kind of heighten the realism of, in effect, if you don't say, I inspect the door and I have a trap on the door, it's going to explode on you. I'm sorry. You have to learn these lessons. You have to learn them the hard way. But I also am not amazingly keen on these almost punitive styles. But some people really love that. So each their own.
And that's one of the beauties of both improv and of role-playing games, is that as long as you know your audience, and, certainly the way I played Call of Cthulhu was very much sort of more of a immersive storytelling thing. We had the rules, and you played the rules, but it was the story that was most important.
Yes.
We did a really fun thing in that I established the particular world in the 1920s, and then my friend Pete took over being the keeper of arcane lore, but in the same universe that I'd created.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that.
Really lovely, because I could have established an NPC. This is a non-player character, we should explain that. Oh,
yes. Oh, my goodness.
So this is a character that exists in the world which isn't played by one of the players. So I could create an NPC, and maybe I had a plan for them, maybe I didn't, but then Pete could then take that. And so I got to play in the world that I created.
That's so cool.
That was a really lovely thing to do.
So cool. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
A friend of mine might be running a one-shot in my homebrew world, and I'm so excited for it, like, ridiculously. I'm just like, yes, I want to... It's like that thing of, like, building an intricate Lego world or Minecraft world and then being able to be in it and be like, ha-ha, I made you. I made all of you. But you're just playing a shadow mug. Hush.
And that sort of shared universe creation that I got from role-playing games, I now get from improv.
Absolutely. I think playing role-play games with improvisers is a uniquely fun experience. It genuinely is, because everybody's so fun and collaborative, and everybody's really, really keen to help each other out. Not, I like playing with non-improvisers as well, but with improvisers, there seems to be less of a feeling that each character is out on their own and we can have suspicions in the party and whatever. Everyone kind of assumes that everyone's on the same page, which is to make a good story. But of course, that's not necessarily what people want, and there's essentially no wrong way to play an RPG, right? Playing with improvisers is definitely really fun. I love that there are a lot of kind of more rules light tabletops I've been kind of looking into vaguely.
Have you done any indie role-playing?
Indie role-playing?
Yes. So games like Fiasco and things like that?
Oh, yes, yeah. Bits and pieces.
Oh, yeah.
Not unfortunately, anything in depth. But the indie role plays where you kind of you build a world collaboratively, where you say, okay, a big historic event happened here, and there are publications of a similar nature that I simply can't remember, so I won't attempt to list. As Stuart very wisely gave me the tip of, if you can't remember it, just don't set yourself up to try and remember it. And I did, and I walked right into the alligator pit, and now I'm being torn limb from limb by my own.
I feel you opened the door without checking for a trap.
So dang it, no!
Got you there.
I'm not a rogue. I'm the least rogue person. I'm the least rogue. I am not subtle. I do not enjoy leaping or flipping or sneaking. I will walk in and I will sing a song and I will be on my way, sir. This is the only issue with playing D&D with improvisers, is that everyone is like, why don't you take a quiz to see what class you are? And everyone turns up bard. Someone turns up with, like, geek.
I recently actually sat outside the Miller, played Fiasco with a bunch of role players, and it was like, oh, I had forgotten how much I enjoyed role playing and doing it with improvisers. It's better. Just going to put that out there.
Stuart said it.
Just going to say it's better with improvisers. I'm not saying many things are, but I'm certainly going to say role-playing with improvisers is better.
Let it go on Stuart's record.
I'm going to stand behind that. That's
it is great. I have to say
that's me. That's my truth. We should talk about some of the other things that you're involved in.
Yes, I feel like we could definitely do an hour's podcast just talking about tabletops.
We certainly could. So you were a member of the Oxford Imps?
Yes, indeed.
Is this how you discovered improv?
Yes, it was actually. So in high school, in secondary school, I did like a little theatre sports show, but nothing really serious. And I'd done youth theatre since I was like 10, for quite a while at our Northern Farm, our local theatre over in Maidenhead. It's wonderful. Really a big shout out to those guys. Genuinely, it was amazing. And so that set me up really well. I went up to Oxford, and in my first week or two, everyone was holding auditions, and I knew I wanted to do some kind of drama, some kind of entertainment. So I went and auditioned for this and that, and then I came back to college, and one of my friends I just met said, hey, do you want to come and audition for the Imps? And I had actually tried to get into the Imp show the previous week, and met my lovely friend Sylvia Bishop, and I was the first person. She was on the door, and I was in effect the first person who said, no, I'm sorry, we're full too. No. So I was like, you know what, as a kind of a jokey way, I was like, you know what, she's not going to let me in as an audience member, I'll go in as a performer. It's obviously not. Basically my friend suggested we go along because it was fun workshop style auditions. So I went along. Actually, one of my scenes in my first audition was with Archie Cornish, who then ended up being another member of our gen who got in. It was great fun, really fun. And then so we had auditions and then callbacks, that's how I got into it. And I hadn't really done specifically improv before. As I said, I'd done short form kind of improv sessions in youth theatre, but doing specifically short form improv and mid form kind of and longer forms kind of as we approached longer shows. We had a kind of a spring term show. It was very, very cool, very exciting. I did a regular short form show and a long form Shakespeare show. And it was just wild. And from then improv was essentially my bar to cling to, like a metal kind of bar to cling to. I'm just imagining that scene in Doctor Who with Rose and the Doctor, where like everything's going completely wrong and she's just clinging onto that bar attached to the wall.
Too soon.
Although very excited for the new Doctor. Very excited.
So excited for the new Doctor.
Cannot wait.
I cannot wait. In this terrible world that we find ourselves in the moment, it may only be a TV programme, but sometimes a TV programme can make a difference.
Yes.
And if this is how we must resist, then...
Yes, dang it.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited. And I'm so excited for representation to be better than, I'm not going to go on the Doctor Who rant, but I know we all probably could have our own Doctor Who rants. I'm just very excited about that.
I feel that this is another episode that we could record for our Patreon subscribers. Hello, Mark. Thank you for that. I have one Patreon subscriber, so we could just go around Mark's house. That would probably it's reasonably efficient. I don't know how pleased he would be.
Just
but
hi,
Mark. We're going to talk about role-playing games for an hour, and then we're going to talk about Doctor Who for an hour. Is that all right?
Excuse me, Mark. I don't know you, but we have opinions. Let us into your house.
You pay me £2 a month or something like that, and so this is your reward.
This is what you did to yourself in a way. Oh man,
punishment.
yeah, very very excited. So improv was like the thing Rose clings onto when everything's going wild and tragic, through my degree and then through various life things afterwards, and I remember talking to my mum about kind of what to do after university, and I had just had no idea. I was so just kind of broken in a lot of ways after university, and she essentially said, right, what if I said you have to go and work in this, what are your immediate reactions? I was like, fine, okay, yeah. And then she was like, okay, what if I said you had to give up improv? And I sat up in my chair and I was like, no. I was like, oh, this is the thing I want to do. This is it. It was basically my anchor throughout the whirlwind of young adult life, and indeed adult life. Oh God, I'm an adult. Might not seem like it. But yeah, so that was kind of my transitional experience, which you didn't ask for, but I told you.
No, I wanted that. I may not have asked.
Good.
I might not have asked with my words, but with my mind, with my spirit. I still find the idea of having done improv at university really exciting, because I've spoken to a few people. And I discovered improv much after university. So the idea of actually having done that at university, I was like, oh, that would have been good.
Yeah.
I mean, I discovered role-playing, to bring it back to that. So that's when I started playing Call of Cthulhu and RuneQuest, and they were some of the happiest times I had at university. So if I could have just done improv as well, that would have been marvellous. But anyway.
I have to say, it's great. It's a great thing to do at university. And what's really nice, I think, about the student improv scene specifically is so many groups go up to Edinburgh for short runs, long runs, whatever. And I remember a few years ago, we essentially in the end said, like, there are so many very nice, funny people who are doing exactly what we're doing, or relatively similar. Why don't we, in terms of being students, doing improv and like having their first fringes and, learning forms and stuff like that. And then we basically decided to kind of invite a bunch of people over to a flat party, and making those connections with other student improv groups and the whole student improv scene is just so nice and so fun. And we've done a lot of stuff with like the Cambridge Impronauts and kind of a Battle of the Blues face-off, and then we all go up to the Gilder Balloon Bar afterwards and have a drink and a laugh, because it's all fabricated except for one of you, and you know who you are. No, not at all. They're genuinely lovely people, and like they invited us over to Cambridge, and Ryan Murphy of Bumper Blyton used to do a lot of student improv up at Durham, and so I actually met him 2 or 3 years before we both auditioned for Blyton, and it was lovely. It's just so nice to be able to see familiar faces and various people. Of course, I mean, the Imps will forever be in my heart, and you make genuinely lifelong friends in the Imps, which is amazing. It's an experience like no other. I think the Imps is just unique and wonderful like that. But yeah, having a lot of student improv going on at the same time is really nice.
Yes, and also having more time to devote to that sort of activity.
Yeah.
Must be great as well.
Yeah, really, really nice. Really lovely.
Cool. Well, you mentioned Bumper Blyton, so
yes,
we should
indeed.
talk about Bumper Blyton.
Hey, look at these smooth segues we're achieving. I'm enjoying it very much.
Thank you. Yes, tell me about your experiences of Bumper Blyton.
Oh, Blyton is great fun. It is essentially an excuse to dress like an evacuee and go, golly gosh, and fling tea cakes at people. But, okay, so that's one side of it. But it is also, on a genuine level, really, really fun to do a proper long form piece. So I was I was in Bumper Blyton before I was in any of the other sort of longer form shows. And it's genuinely lovely to be playing for something like the Enid Blyton canon, because so many people you're flying to or you're chatting to will come up to you and essentially say, "Oh, I love those books as a kid," and it's just that commonality. In a similar way that I found running with the auditions for Hero's Journey, where you suddenly identify that you and this stranger you've never met have these twin passions, and you both have experienced, you've both stepped through the wardrobe essentially into the same beautiful, wonderful world. Obviously, there are some really big issues with Enid Blyton as it's written, but I think taking the best parts of Blyton, the camaraderie and the courage of children and the fun, weird adventures they get up to, while also being tongue-in-cheek about the period and kind of enjoying the references there, is kind of the best of all worlds. And obviously we don't we kind of dismiss anything that we don't like, because there's no value in bringing that forward. But we do take forward the bits we like picnics.
Yes.
And yeah, that's a very roundabout way of saying we're no longer as misogynist and racist as the Blyton canon is. And me saying no longer there does not say that the show was in any way before rough. It certainly wasn't.
I mean, you very much started with Anne and, you know, being kicked under the table for revealing the secrets.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but that's it's genuinely a lovely experience to have somebody, in effect, go into, and you get kind of your mother's age or older ladies and gentlemen who grew up with Blyton as sort of their key fictional experience, and you see them coming into the show and their faces are just lit up,
that's
and
lovely.
they delight in it. And I think, because we don't specifically play like a famous five adventure, we do not cast ourselves as, you know, George and Timmy the dog and whatever, that in a lot of ways is kind of more fun to play with than someone just seeing a story they've seen before rehashed. We could go anywhere and do something entirely new while having that nostalgic feel and staying true to the spirit of Blyton as opposed to the letter of Blyton. So I think it's very fun.
Which was your favourite Blyton series?
Oh, I have to say I really enjoyed Naughtiest Girl in School when I was that kind of age, because I found that, you know, the idyllic boarding school world where the only issue is, you know, someone's been putting nasty notes in someone else's locker, and the school pantomime might not be excellent if Daryl can't learn to get along with the other girls. But Daryl can, of course, and they all love it. We actually, before our Edinburgh shows, we got into the habit of having story time where we read chunks of the Blyton books before we went on stage, which I absolutely loved.
That is lovely.
Partially because it was very sweet, and, you know, we could, you know, really enjoy the stories, and partially because you go back and you realise half of them are just lists. A lot of them were like, oh, in comes Elsie with her 7 brothers, Thomas, Harry, Nicholas, Toby, Duncan, and Wiseman, and they're on 7 horses, thunder, lightning, periwinkle, pudding, sprinkles, and chive. And, you know, these Wiseman obviously owns Chive. And just so much of them are so much of those stories is kind of weird invention.
Yes, well, due to the way in which she wrote them, you know, it was all very much first draft, and there was no revision or anything. Just
exactly.
You know, just came out as a stream of consciousness almost. But that's a lovely warm-up. That's
so fun.
That's kind of quite an innovative. Well, I've certainly never heard of that before, even for people who are doing, say, a Harry Potter inspired. You know, I've not heard of them reading a chapter from the Chamber of Secrets before they go on stage. So that's. I
think it's lovely, but Jonah, I apologise if that was a company secret I spilled. I don't think it was. We did it in a public dressing room. And look, I've just got to make a quick text. No, we're absolutely fine. There you go. But I do think it's really fun. It's a really fun way to get yourself into the genre, and also everybody sits down and does the same thing. Yes. Everyone takes turns reading. Yes. Everybody laughs and giggles at the silly bits, and it's a way of getting everybody's heads in the same place. I think it's very smart.
And also the joy of reading aloud to other people. I mean, certainly when my kids were smaller, I read to them at bedtime. But it's a really lovely communal thing to do. And you don't really do that as an adult. No,
you don't completely. And I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people kind of move away from reading. We don't really have the time to sit alone for hours and hours without phones happening, without this and that happening. And I'm not going to go on a rant and sound like an ancient old crone being like, phones are ruining the world. Because, come on, technology's brilliant. And you're just mad because your kids won't look up from Facebook to talk to you over the dinner table. Like, come on. Maybe that's me projecting. It's like, no, it's not at all. But like, one of the issues is, of course, now we don't really have any way to, in effect, put our phones down and pick up a book and be on our own sat. Because it's in many ways less engaging, in many ways more. Not, kicking down books here. But yeah, I think reading communally or reading the same book together, that's what my sister and I used to do with the Harry Potter series. We would both get the same book and move, we'd each have 2 bookmarks in it.
Oh, wow.
So in effect, we just like move the Post-it note every time we got past. And yeah, that, I think, experiencing that, it's that same walking through the wardrobe moment of we've had a communal experience and we've all got different lives, but we've come into the same world and we've really enjoyed it. I love that about genre improv, how everyone can come from such different places and yet we've all been in the same. We've all been to Narnia, we've all been to Middle Earth.
Yes.
Even if we've never been to each other's hometowns or met each other's families. Yes. I love that.
That's really interesting. We've kind of got this shared imaginative space that we've both existed in.
Yeah.
Tom Bombadil.
Oh, Tom Bombadil.
No time, unfortunately. Watch out, Mark. We'll come around to your house to tell you our thoughts about Tom Bombadil.
For anyone listening as opposed to watching,
I think
we just stared out into space for a good 5 seconds. Yeah, Tom Bombadil, man.
I will say, the Silmarillion.
Favourite opening to a statement, Emma? Go ahead.
When my kids were little, I mean they're 15 and 13 now, but when they were little, sometimes I would want a book that was interesting enough to them so they'd want me to read it to them, but not so interesting it would keep them awake. And I tell you what, the Silmarillion, straight out like a line. I barely got past Ulmo and the Venya and the other Venya, not the Vanya, and the... Anyway... So anyway, that's a little tip for anyone looking after small children who like talking. It's quite a niche audience.
Life hacks.
Life hacks. Hashtag
specific nerd life hacks. Look, if you've got a copy of the Silmarillion lying around, all I'm saying is you've got to find a use for it.
Exactly. It's going to serve you well. Cool. We should talk about I've written this down. Adventures of the Improvised Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah!
Do you read each other's Sherlock Holmes stories as warm-up before that?
We don't. I should really suggest that, because that would be absolutely lovely. So nice. I love it. Sherlock Holmes is a world I have loved for years. And I think my favourite Holmes is probably Jeremy Brett, of course.
Yeah.
He's become the kind of definitive takeover from Basil Rathbone, I think, a bit. Certainly for the more modern generations, but the actual show is it's just so fun. It's just so fun. Because we played it in Edinburgh as a 3-hander, and I think that's what we're doing when we hopefully tour to Perth and Adelaide with it in the spring. So that'll be really cool, and I'm totally not terrified of that. It's totally fine. No, I'm actually really, really excited. I've never been to Australia, of course.
No.
But the other cast members, Tom Skelton, Danny Roberts, all these people have done it before, because they're obviously toured with Racing Minds and things like that. So I am in good hands, I feel. And it's just such a fun show. It's so fun to be able to take the serious world of Victoriana and then turn it into something that is silly and ridiculous. And because almost everybody in the cast is from like Oxford or has interest in the historical and very specific interest somewhere, it's so fun to be able to have a show that is kind of wordy, and we're going to make a reference to Arthurian England and the Knights of the Round Table, and then Alice is just going to list a bunch of stories about King Arthur, and meanwhile I'm over here being like, well, actually I think you'll find that the Natural Science Museum or Natural History Museum wasn't actually founded at that particular era or whatever. And just in effect, it's really fun to have that style of improv where you can be a bit of a dick to each other, but not in a way that's detracting.
No.
Yeah, it's really, really fun.
So what's the format for that? You ask for a suggestion at the beginning?
Yeah, pretty much. We have a suggestion for the title of the show, the title of the mystery, and c'est ça. And then we do a little opening kind of scene where we go through a couple of the titles, and then the third title we pick up is the one we use. And
is that in character?
Yes, yeah. So we have
lovely.
not to put. I mean, if you want to find out what happens in the closing vignette, come and see the show.
Yes, exactly.
But the only vignette is an older retired Dr. Watson dozing in his gentleman's club, and then he meets someone, and that's all I'm allowed to tell you without you buying a ticket. But it's great. And then obviously we go into the improvised show, and it's been running for a couple of years before I joined, so it's really nice because we have that set up format, and a lot of the members know how the show works really well. And then we just have Victorian adventures. I love the Victorian era so much. It's I mean, I don't want to be mean to any other eras of history, because that's how history works.
Well, yeah, so because, hello, I'm the Georgian era. I'll just go then.
Yes, please do. You were actually quite bad. Not that the Victorians were any better, let's be honest. We've got to own our history, folks. If we're not talking about tabletops, we're going to talk about historiography. But yeah, I love it so much. I did a thesis on Victorian women in science as part of my degree, and that's just so fascinating to me. And I think we have a responsibility as owners and custodians of the past, as we all are, because it shapes our future and our present, to acknowledge how we teach science and how we remember science and history, and the fact that we kind of have this defined idea of a Victorian scientist as one brilliant man.
Yeah.
You know, if you think Brunel, Fox Talbot, all of these undeniably brilliant men, but we don't acknowledge the uncredited wives, the uncredited maids and servants who did the washing, looked after the kids, did the drawings, did the writing. I mean, a lot of these Victorian scientific books were written by women basically leafing through indecipherable notes and assuming this is what their husband meant, and then putting it up and getting no credit. The beautiful illustrations that women did of flowers and all these kinds of things that were necessary, completely necessary before photography, and before photography became popular and usable. That was the backbone of science, but we don't credit that. We also think of them as tending to be fairly rich, well-off men, or at least well-educated and middle class, but that, I think, takes the legacy of science away from working class folk who kept market gardens and did exactly what science is, which is experimenting to see what affects what, keeping diaries of what soil content and what weather affects what grew. I mean, cooking is just chemistry, but because it's done by women, except all the high-paid chefs who are men. I'm on a rant here, Stuart. I don't know if you noticed, but
I'm sitting back and enjoying the ride.
Well, yeah, essentially, we need to look at how we remember scientists and acknowledge that science is not just done by one person, it's done in a collaborative way. And I think, on the whole, not being a scientist myself and not being involved in the world of contemporary science as anything more than a very excited spectator, I think taking an acknowledgement of collaboration is very crucial. But beyond that, and especially with historic approaches and how we remember scientists of the past, we need to look at how we define science and how our memory treats science, and recognise that maybe sometimes that lens is discriminatory. Anyway, so yeah, I like the Victorians. Excited to do some Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. I'm sorry. No idea how I went there. No. Actually, I'm not sorry. I had to be said.
Don't be sorry. Say it. Yes. I'm hoping that people who had prejudiced views will be listening to this.
Everybody who was like, Mary Schmanning. Yeah. Mary Anning's great.
They're going to have changed their views.
Exactly. You know what? I've solved it. I've solved the whole of misogyny, Stuart. It's the thing.
Well, I'm glad that you've done it on this podcast.
Thanks.
So this will be listened to by literally tens of people, hundreds of people. But,
I know Mark will be here.
Mark, I'm so sorry. He's already sorted as far as misogyny is concerned. He's very much against that.
Good. Well,
I don't. Well, I tell you what, I could vet my Patreon supporters because, as I say, I've only got one. But I'm prepared to take the money of misogynists because They don't deserve it.
It's I see. So it's kind of like a cat burglary style thing, a kind of Robin Hood style, but via Patreon for an improv podcast.
I mean, it's a long process, a really inefficient process, but that's what I'm going to carry on doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just going to say that I really love history and improv when you put them together.
Oh, amazing! So fun.
Yeah, it just takes you to different places because once you've seen a certain amount of improv, it falls into certain patterns, and you do tend to see the same things coming up again and again and again. So when you add improv and history together, and even if people don't necessarily have the level of understanding of history that you do, just it takes them to different places, and you see different things. So I am always a big fan of anything. Fun, right? History plus improv equals fun.
I love it so much. It's so fun, and it's an excuse, right? It's an excuse to really get your hands deep into a period of history or a particular intellectual property. Improv Shakespeare is another amazing example. The work they do is just brilliant, and the language that they employ is extraordinary and mind-blowing. And also when you see everyone around in their Tudor shirts and their, it just transports you, and it's so fun. I think it's one of the things I've enjoyed with both the Holmes show and the Bumper Blyton show, is that you do have an excuse to just in effect do a really in-depth research project on something. We all assigned each other particular subjects to do research projects on for Blyton.
Oh, really?
Like features of the kind of 1945 to 55 kind of period. I mean, it's obviously a little bit either side of that, but pretty much that's the area we're aiming. And I got technology, and the brief from Amy and Jonah was that it was to be a 5-minute presentation and no more. And I, of course, put together a half-an-hour presentation that was supposed to be 40 minutes. It's just so fun to get your hands in and be like, I saw like pictures of the Skylon and all of these things and trends and technology and how different technology was then. And the fact they didn't have central heating until the 70s. I think that's what I remember. This is the one issue with going deep dive is about a month or two later I have no idea what I've deep daved where I've deep daved. I'm not sure we can call it that. I emphatically actually think we cannot call it that. It's going to be a lot of confusion, but I love that kind of getting really involved in that kind of thing. Yeah,
and also, I did that when I was role playing. It was never 100% accurate representation of the 1920s and 30s. It was more, but it was taking a flavour and trying to evoke the times, and taking certain elements to inform it rather than necessarily trying to recreate it from scratch.
That's the joy of historical fiction, right? You can pick and choose whatever you like.
Yes, exactly right.
Just going to turn on the light.
Quickly. Right, yes.
Because otherwise I can't see the podcast words we're doing.
It's got dark. It's got dark.
It's beautiful though. We've got a great view.
We've got a great view of the Shard and London Bridge. Thank you once again to the nursery for.
Yes.
I feel I don't thank the nursery enough for giving us this space.
Who does really? We all ought to just take a moment now to thank the nursery.
Thank you. Let's thank the nursery. Everyone at home, take a minute. Not a minute, just 10 seconds to thank the nursery.
No, 60 whole seconds. You know someone who works for the nursery. Now's a great time to send them a nice text. Maybe a funny picture. Or something you saw, a relatable GIF perhaps. Is there a meme that's popped up on your timeline you know Jennifer would love? Send it over. The nursery. And Stuart, I just think I ought to say now, I'm sorry for getting your podcast kicked off the nursery. We're going to be recording next to a bin next time. So, Vicky, so excited you came back. Yeah, hi Stu, you all right? Things went wrong, that's all I'm saying.
You mentioned getting your hands on an intellectual property.
Yes, Your Honour.
So you've taken the innovative approach that no other improv group has ever done, and produced a show based on Harry Potter.
Yes, so this is in association with Type 5 in Oxford. So we've done a variety of different shows. We did an improvised court case called Mock Trial earlier in the year and last year. That was great fun in Oxford town hall which has a courtroom in it.
Oh, wow.
It was great fun. It was really, really enjoyable. We've done, Type 5 does a bunch of stand-up nights and things. A lot of things in aid of Mind, the charity, which is fascinating, fantastic. Both. And yeah, really, really lovely. So it's a pleasure to play with that side of things when I do. But most recently, we have put together Harry Howsam has, as kind of captain of the Type 5 ship, has put together a Harry Potter inspired show by the name of the show that must not be named, because it really mustn't, for various legal reasons. I mean, the world of Harry Potter is just another one, right, where everybody has such a connection to Hogwarts and such an emotional connection to their identity within it. I mean, I'm pretty sure if I asked anyone who's read Harry Potter, you'd be able to tell me the house you're in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Stuart, which house are you in, though?
I'm in Slytherin.
Oh, I'll forgive you.
Which, to be honest, came as a big surprise to me. Well, so my children found out which house they were in without consulting me, and as their father, I feel I should be taking an active role in their education. So my eldest child is in Ravenclaw, and my youngest child is in Hufflepuff.
Aww.
Don't patronise my son.
No, actually, look, hey, some of my best friends are Hufflepuffs. Okay?
Oh, right, yeah.
No, genuinely, Hufflepuff, great house.
So I go to Pottermore, and I did test, and I'm in Slytherin.
Oh.
How am I in Slytherin?
I don't know.
I'm not the least fascist person I know.
Yeah, but Slytherin isn't. I don't want to leap to the defence of Slytherin House. I'm a Ravenclaw. I want to be reading a book. I want to be reading a book with a hot chocolate in a tower, and taking no great part in the story of Harry Potter. Apparently, like maybe half of us stay for the final battle, but all Slytherin go. So hey, spoilers. Sorry, I'm just ruining 3 or 4 intellectual properties on your podcast. I hope that's okay. Slytherin is like ambition, right? It's all about like knowing what you want and then getting there. And like you're an ambitious guy. You set up a podcast.
Well,
you took,
I suppose so.
You took initiative and you made a whole Call of Cthulhu world. Like it's about having goals and then like being determined to achieve those goals. That's my approach to Slytherin. It's just some of the Slytherin's goals in the books are fascist.
Right. Okay.
And that I don't think you're that kind of Slytherin.
Well, thank you.
Just so that everyone knows.
Reassured. I mean, I have this real fascist reputation on the improv scene.
You're the improv fascist.
With my podcast.
Improv, famously a right-wing pursuit as well. Man, the bubble. Wow. I
mean, podcasts the most fascist
of
communication means, which we give away for free.
Oh man, yeah, no, but I think being Slytherin's fine. I think that must be fun, right? Because you can achieve things. I even when I want to achieve things, I would always rather be reading. It's like, oh yeah, I should complete that application, that letter, that important email. Cool. Well, back to this book. But Ginny just gave me a book on the social history of Britain from 1918 to 1945, and I must see what happens at the end. Oh dear.
So what sort of is it narrative? Is it what's your unique twist on the?
Well, our unique twist is that we do it in Blackwell's bookshop.
Oh, brilliant.
So,
That's good. Yeah, no one else is doing that. Yeah.
No, it's great fun. It's in conjunction with a lot of the like 20-year relaunch stuff. I think with a lot of anniversary stuff's come out. With Harry Potter now, I think. Blackwell's are doing big promotions like that. Oxford is a city which has so many beautiful locations to perform, and we're really, really lucky to be able to perform in them and to be able to show that we can do good shows and bring people in and celebrate this common interest we have. I think one of the reasons that the Harry Potter universe is so engaging, especially for improv troupes, is because it feels like there are so many stories in it that could still be told, right? Like we follow quite religiously, we follow just Harry's story, and that's engaging for the 7 books, 8 films, and then 2 other films, and then like supplementary publications and whatnot. But like we rolling by and large, not not everything is engaging or great, but a lot of the features of the world of Harry Potter are so engaging and so promising. Yes. She's got dragons, but somehow the story's not just about dragons. You've got a giant squid in a lake, and the story is not about this giant squid in a lake. Like, it's about this boy. Like, really? Like, obviously, it should be about the titular character, but I feel like that's something that draws improv troupes in, because it's such a familiar world and there are so many stories still to be told. Hopefully. I mean, I don't know. Because one of the shows here was Magic, which is another original. Yes. And I've seen bits and pieces of, like, I think Spontaneous Potter was up at the Edinburgh Fringe, and honestly, I think it's one of those cases where the more the merrier. I don't necessarily think any one Harry Potter improv show is going to become the definitive Harry Potter improv show. So I think it's just kind of a fun world to run around in, and it's again that commonality that a lot of people have been through the wardrobe into Hogwarts. Yes. I mean, that would be a crossover. Being on the Hogwarts Express into Hogwarts.
Yes, and as you say, you can see. I mean, if you enjoy improvisation in the world of Harry Potter, then you can go and see Improbable in the Chamber of Secrets, and you can also go and see Magic. So we can't see Magic because it's not on the moment, but in theory, and you would still enjoy them both, and they've both got slightly different takes. So it doesn't have to be just one Harry Potter improv group, which is very good because there are lots. Yes,
and if you want to come and see one, come and see The Show That Must Not Be Named.
What's it like in performing in a bookshop?
Oh, great fun. Yeah. Really, really fun. Especially when you can be surrounded by a bunch of carts covered in Harry Potter books, and they've got all these sorts of different props and things, and then we can stick up a bunch of posters, and like we, as part of the show, have a series of about 3 old-looking trunks with various kind of owls in cages and jars, and we all have wands and robes for the show. So it's great fun, and you can do a reasonable and sensible amount of set dressing as long as you take it down afterwards.
It's my favourite type of set dressing.
Exactly. And we did other shows. We did some at the Story Museum in Oxford, which is a wonderful place, and we've done various other improv shows there. It's one of those lovely cities where pretty much anywhere you go, you could just be like, this is Hogwarts or Hogsmeade.
Fantastic, excellent. And you're also involved in Multiverse.
I am indeed, yes.
Tell me about Multiverse and your involvement in Multiverse.
Well, Multiverse is an improvised musical show. I really, really love doing improvised music. It's not really going to be a surprise, I have to say, if we mention another one of my projects. The only surprise is going to be if I turn around and be like, really hate that show, actually. I feel like that's my opening to all of them is, I really love the show I'm doing, it's great. Yeah. But I genuinely do. So Multiverse, at the moment we are every first Wednesday of the month at House of Idiot at the Market House Brixton. And we are a split narrative musical improv show. So we do, in effect, a character reaches a choice, a question that they have to make, a decision after, and then we follow timeline A, see how that ended, where they make one choice, and then they make the other choice, and we follow timeline B.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's fun, right? It's such a unique little USP of that.
Yeah. It sounds slightly mind-bending.
Yes. But, yes, absolutely. It's very important to keep track of where everything goes and what the kind of key features are. But we sometimes do non-split narrative stuff, especially at House of Idiot, where sometimes you just kind of want a 35-minute show. And split narrative, I think, is fun to do, but it shines best in sort of 50 to 60 minutes. Yes. Because then you can get properly engaged in the world. I love doing musical improv stuff, and I am that annoying person in a non-musical improv troupe who's going to be like, but what if we had a song here, guys? What if we just had a mean rap breakdown? I can do rapping, which means I could rhyme and be like, ooh, that's pretty much as into it as I get. And so being able to do it with an actually devoted musical improv group is a real delight. They're all lovely, obviously. Really fun. I've only been a member for a few months, but we are looking to kind of build on where the group has been and where it is going, so that's very exciting.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah. If someone was to step on stage with you, what could they do to delight you?
Oh, great question. In the context of Multiverse or just in general?
In general.
Delight me, man. I really, really like people who come on with a cool character idea, but no idea where the scene is going. And this is something that I have been trying to do for my own improv and often failing. I'm the person who comes on stage with an idea of how the plot must go, and because it makes sense in my head, so I'm actually helping people by forcing my plot down their throats. And coming on with folk like, I mean, the one that springs to mind at the moment is James Whittaker, who is fantastic at doing this, and we have so many fun scenes in Blighton where he just comes on stage and we know we are going to be villain and sidekick, and we know we are going to just slam out some great weird games and fun plot, and we are going to have strange characters, and doing that kind of thing where you make the transition from more studenty comedy where it's in effect you are an improviser speaking to another improviser on stage to coming on with a character and making decisions to be someone other than yourself. And it's harder, but it's really, really cool. So I think that often delights me when someone comes on with it and you can just see it in their eyes. I am here to support you. I've been trying to channel that for myself, but we're not always successful. Man, other thing, I really, really love when somebody else finishes a punchline for me. That I've deliberately set up. Now, if you steal my joke, I will have to have a word with you backstage. But in terms of, if just puns and wordplay are always a delight for me, even when they're not necessarily, suitable or helpful for the genre. But I love just being able to do that, and I love that feeling of being able to toss a ball up in the air and know that someone else is just going to whack it, and someone else is just going to absolutely hit a home run with it. And being able to do that, I think, also is a sign of a team working really well together. When you see somebody go either somewhere you intend or somewhere you don't intend with something you've set up, and it feels really truly collaborative there, because they couldn't have climbed over that wall without you putting your knee down and your hands down, and kind of giving them a boost. I think that delights me most, when somebody goes somewhere with an offer that I've made that means that we were collaborating together.
That sounds fantastic. Time for the big final question.
Okay, I'm ready.
So
42. Sorry.
No, that's going to have to go in. Maybe we'll discuss that in the Facebook Live we're going to do after this. So, what is your signature move? What do you go to? What brings the house down? What saves the day? What makes people go, classic Hawley?
Classic Hawley. Man, I mean, I think classic Hawley is coming on at the end with a solution for every stupid little plot point that doesn't need to be tied up, Vicky. The protagonist learnt a lesson. I'm like, yes, but what about that elf we met in Act 3? Why? Scene 4's Santa Claus at the mall doesn't even have a love interest. But Vicky's here! Being able to do that and in effect just like twisty up that loose end, and then stepping forwards and being like, I guess the moral of the story is, and then a musician plays a few chords and I look to the audience and I start a song. Excellent. It's only in a context where we know it needs a song at the end, but doing that kind of thing, I think that's a classic Hawley move in effect, marching on. Everyone else has tried to do the finale and I'm like, don't worry, I'm here, I got it. That kind of thing is very, very fun. I like doing that a lot.
Well, I wish we had a musician here so that we could end on a song.
Well, I do not. Thankfully, I've very much been enjoying this. But I would not want to sully your good podcast with me warming up for 15 minutes and like frantically texting 6 pianists. Like, please, I can't pay you any money, but I want to sing one song. Let's do it. Please, let's come and play some chords.
Maybe the next time you come on the podcast, we can do that. Or maybe not. All that remains is for me to say thank you for being a guest on the Improv London podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a genuine delight. I've loved this.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
I made this.
That's improv!